Hey YouTube, Relent USA here. Hope y'all have been well. I had to go private for a couple months, I think for about a month and a half since the Charlie Kirk shooting, just because I'm in the transition of actually staying in my career. I'm always a sales guy, but I was in the aspect of getting a new job, which I'll talk into in a little bit. But I didn't want any of my videos being seen by recruiters or anything like that, so better safe than sorry. So everything should be public now, but wanted to just address that. But hope y'all been well. I wanted to make a video recapping October as far as what's going on with American politics and, kind of really the aftermath of Charlie Kirk. That's what's really got me, starting this as a hobby. I've been dabbling a little bit, but that was the moment where I really wanted, I felt like I needed to express my voice. So I'll be going into some key topics before heading into the holiday season. Again, privately, I kind of had to lock in as far as just safeguarding my career really. So that I'll talk a little bit about that with AI, but that's going well. And then I did tease a political project that I've been working on. That it's like the easiest way to fix politics, and it really is. But unfortunately, I've decided to sell the idea. So in the process of trademarking that and hoping to get some cash out of that. And who knows, maybe you could start something big, but there is an aspect of it that I do think, I could sell for a decent amount. So sorry, I'll maybe break that down after I sell it. But in the meantime, that's going to be, I'm going to keep that pretty hidden. So for this video, I'll be going into it's a warm up really for 2026, kind of getting my vocal chops in, because now that I have my career part settled, I'll do this still as a side hobby about once a month, but I have a feeling that 2026 is going to be is the right word, tumultuous? I can't say that word, but like turbulence. There's going to be a lot of turbulence in America in 2026, if I'm right. So this is kind of a warm up video, and just a preview before I get into the details. I am still going to do a video on my 2026 official political calls. That'll be more for international and domestic, especially domestic. And then also I will be doing 2028 presidential calls. I'm actually going to be one of the first people to kind of jump the gun. Everyone's saying, oh, JD Vance or Donald Trump, but I think we could see some variance in the two-party system. So I'll get into that in a separate video. And I'm not doing the midterms for a lot of reasons. So really just congressmen, I don't think they're that interesting. I think most people can bar, like, I think most of our politicians in Congress and the Senate can be legit barcoded. If you take them to a grocery store, you could probably, barcode them and see what their price is. So yeah, the topics for today are going to be Charlie Kirk and the fallout. There's a lot to that. I'll go into kind of the details there. ICE is huge right now. The whole No Keynes protest, migrant. There's a lot of controversies around migration internationally, so I'll go into that a little bit. And then artificial intelligence, and really how it's no longer funny. AI, when it first started a couple of years ago with Will Smith and the spaghetti, it was funny, haha. And now a lot of us are scared for our jobs, and in a lot of sectors. So I'll go into that a little bit with some corporations like Amazon making big announcements, which I saw coming. I have a little, I'm privy to some inside information there. Nothing like confidential, but it's kind of my field. It's a lot of people's field these days. Anyone who works in technology has seen this coming a mile away. So let me get some water first before I get into it. Hope everyone's been well. All right. So the big one, Charlie Kirk's fallout. So the Charlie Kirk assassination, which was, it happened about 2 weeks after that fatal stabbing of the Ukrainian girl on a bus by a African-American Black person. I think it was in one of the Carolinas or Georgia, somewhere on the East Coast. So that happened about a month and a half ago, and there was an immediate fallout. A lot of influential people started backtracking on what they said, but they only backtracked for one cycle. And then once Trump made another move, then they were back on it saying, well, you know what? Maybe he deserved it. Or maybe the Republicans, and it's what did Jesus say? When you point the finger, there's three pointing back at you. And so it's just the blame game with Democrats and Republicans and their extremist fan bases. So that's been going on forever. Nothing's new there. But what is interesting, so Number one, I actually, so I'll talk about this at the end, but intelligence activity I've not been looking into lately. One, I just haven't had the time to really study like intel activity in the moment. It takes a lot of time, a lot of analysis, a lot of like looking at different stories and seeing what's the right one. And I just haven't been able to do it. So as far as the assassination story itself, I don't have the details. I just know that it's getting very murky with Candace Owens. Candace Owens is making um, a lot of noise there. And but there's also some others. Like I think Tucker Carlson was making it, and just the story coming out of the FBI and the agencies, just it's not very good. It does not look good. Like Candace did make a good point. It's messed up, but they I forgot what they did, but they named a street and then they named a holiday after him. And if you know the CIA, that's like that's not a good sign. Like they did that for MLK, who was assassinated. They did it for a lot of people who were assassinated, probably by the CIA, allegedly. Don't quote me on that. So she has a good point there, but I haven't really studied it. But that's been making the noise. Erica Kirk. So rest in peace to her husband. I don't know too much about her, but the timing, as far as like I saw a lot of people say that the memorial felt more like a WWE ceremony. It was very odd. It was almost like a state sponsored event instead of like a mourning and respectable thing. It was almost like they it was definitely like they leveraged it for Republicans, like the old school Republicans, for the MAGA movement. So kind of sketchy there, but rest in peace to her husband. Not going to get into too much details. Now, this is what is important. So the bread and butter of the Charlie Kirk fallout is, I said this in one of my previous videos, the Democrats completely lost the moral high ground. And that's really what they've been holding on to for about a decade, and rightfully so. Like there's a lot of reasons for that, but they have really been clutching onto it. And as I said, I think the last 9 years or so was a cold civil war, and Charlie Kirk getting shot was the end of that. For better or worse. Again, I don't think it's going to get hot. It could become a hot civil war, which is making the news. Again, I don't think it will. I just think we've advanced beyond that as Americans, hopefully. But yeah, they lost the moral high ground. So that's why you're seeing Trump and really the establishment be making crazy moves. The most noticeable one is ICE, which I'll get into that next, my next subject. But they're pretty much allowed to have, they're pretty much allowed to apply their power with one. They own almost all three houses, almost all three houses in the government. So very little oversight and compliance, and then very little backlash because the media is on their heels right now. So even though I lean a little conservative, that's scary. Like that, like people are saying fascist. I don't think fascism is a loaded word in my opinion. But the fact is they don't really have it like checks and balances. After Charlie Kirk's assassination, they don't really have anyone really check them or balance them. So that's been happening a lot. There was the No Kings protest. Personally, I respect anyone who protested. I respect people's rights to protest. It didn't make any sense. Like, first of all, Trump's not a king. We haven't really had like a political king, I would say, since Dick Cheney unofficially. If you study the 2000s, you'll know why. And then probably LBJ, maybe, but more FDR, World War II, which was, it was wartime, so it's different. But the No Kings, I mean, it's the number one reason why it doesn't make any sense, besides the fact that there's not a king, is, the people voted for this. Trump won the majority in 2024. So if there was on Breaking Points, one of them said, Sagar, I think is his name, he said, Americans were kind of forced between two decisions, either assimilation by illegal immigrants or deportations. And Americans voted for deportation. So, it's definitely gotten extreme, which I'll get into next. But, the No Kings protest, it didn't make any sense on those grounds, in my opinion. So another thing with Trump, which this one's just kind of odd, is the ballroom. He destroyed the East Wing. It's already demolished to make this Gilded Age glorious ballroom. What's the right word? Catty. It's very catty. It's not a good look for Americans, America, and our history. It's not. Very very Victorian, before the French Revolution, in my opinion. So those are just some examples of the moral high ground being taken away from the left, and then Trump just taking advantage of that. One of the other ones that is very noticeable is regarding Israel. I'm not going to get into. I see a lot on my algorithm. I'm not going to get into Israel's. We'll just say conspiracy theories. Not going to get into it, or APAC. I'm not going to get into that. But the Gaza Strip, um, it's a bogus deal. Like it's the whole peace deal was made and it's already been broken. The deal itself was outrageously one-sided. So there is an obvious reason why that happened after the Charlie Kirk assassination, in my opinion. So again, a lot of this is just the fallout of that and Republicans and the right taking advantage of it for better or worse. So my second topic, I want to talk about ICE and the migrant controversies. So this one's going to be, I'm going to rant a little bit about this one because there's some history in there. Number one, as I said in the last topic, it was voted for as far as ICE. The whole without due process. People say without due process, and in the streets, it's a little violent. They're not citizens. So I do know the Constitution. The Constitution does say instead of citizens, it says like people for one of the lines. But you're not going to get the same sympathy from Americans if you come here legally, if you mooch off the system, if you start crime. And fortunately, for better or worse, this is what Americans voted for. So it is getting extreme, though. Like I have seen some videos that even make me kind of shudder a little bit. But however, I think for the macro level, I think most Americans, if they won't say it, actually support it. Unfortunately, there is isolated cases where it's really bad. It's really bad, and there is like a racial conflict there as far as like ICE is able to frisk pretty much anyone who speaks Spanish and looks illegal. So a lot of like white people, I'm a white guy, but a lot of white people are getting a little 1950s, a little. What was his name? Oh, I can't think of the name. I can't think of the name, but a lot of lynchings. People are talking about lynchings for the first time in years, and that's not a good look. So there's a lot of outrage in that's going on in the United States. This is not so historically though. This is not the first time that deportations have happened. This actually isn't even as bad as the '90s. I think the '90s was more for Cubans or maybe some part of South America, but Bill Clinton did a ton of deportations in the '90s. So I think a lot of people forget about that this is not like a brand new thing. It's just the first time I would say with modern social media that we're able to see it in real time every single day. Another example is the Trail of Tears. So this one happened in the 1800s. And if you haven't studied the Trail of Tears, you probably don't want to. It's very depressing. Pretty much Native Americans, whether it was probably racism, but for a lot of reasons, they were, I don't know if it was a presidential order or if it was voted for. I think it was voted for that to be displaced. And back then, this is one of the blackest spots in American histories because pretty much we forced Native Americans to like tiny reservations, but we didn't give them the proper resources for the walk. So you had all these, Americans and these politicians marching Native Americans with zero resources, allowing them to die on the way. That's why it's called the Trail of Tears. Is I think 1/3 of all Native Americans who did the trek didn't make it to the end. So another kind of thing of deportations. That one's the worst example. But so this is unfortunately these things can happen. And then lastly is the global outrage. So this one's not really American. This one's more going to be about European. I think with America, we've always been open immigration. I actually studied Jewish immigration with Galveston, Texas, after World War II. And then there's, Ellis Island in New York, and, it's part of our DNA. Like almost everyone here is due to an immigrant. Like I'm related to a founding father, but on my mom's side, I'm related to Italian immigrants. So they are needed. But with Europe, one, they weren't as accepted. They're just not as big, number one. So like if we bring in 10 million immigrants, right, we can sparse them out across 50 states. Now, when the United Kingdom, when France, when Germany, when all these other countries bring them in, they don't have the proper geography or resources to handle them. And so I'm seeing some crazy news going on in Europe. And it's gotten bad. Like there is like a more of a left liberal establishment there, but the ju- I'm just ranting here. The judicial system, what is going on with the judicial system in the world? That is hands down. Like people want to blame the presidents. The presidents are a lot of presidents are figureheads these days. And then there's Congress, and Congress has always been a circus. So it will always be a circus. It was a circus in Rome. When you put 200 representatives of rich people and people who are just looking for votes, it gets crazy. But the judicial system is supposed to be the order of the global, I don't know the right word, the global system. And the judicial system for the Western world has been decimated. I don't know what's going on, but like we've been seeing it a lot. So the one that happened recently is the one in Ireland where a 10-year-old girl was assaulted, we'll say. And oh man, there's been some crazy news. And pretty much, I think the guy was like, yeah, one, the thing that pissed me off the most is none of the news people in Ireland cover the story. So like only one news outlet covered it, which is why it became a controversy and there was riots and burning in the streets, and but all the other newspapers didn't even cover it, which is crazy. And you're seeing that happen a lot. And then I don't think the guy went to jail. I don't know if he was young or something, but it was really bad. And I think a lot of natives, native Irish. There was another one recently where the assaults for another woman was didn't last long enough to be charged, which is just what are we even talking about? Very odd. But so in the United Kingdom, I'll give a little information on the United Kingdom that a lot of Americans don't know is the I think it was gangs, migrant rape gangs is what they called them. But what really is crazy there is the government knew about it for about 15 years. So it had been happening on a decently mass scale in the United Kingdom to young white women. Usually, unfortunately, this happens a lot, even in America. They were underprivileged, under-resourced, CPS, like orphaned girls. But the government knew of these incidents happening for about 15 years and actively censored for them to not look racist. So this goes into my third point, which is there is, and as Miguel talked about this, there is a backlash going on for like, and this is where it gets complicated because if you don't know your history, women weren't allowed to have checkings accounts like 50 years ago. That's why the divorce rate was so low. And racism was rampant. Racism was rampant 30 years ago, like in the early 90s, especially in the 80s. But even in the 90s and the 2000s, I would say it started dying off a little bit as far as on like a individual basis. But so that's the history. And then if you want to go farther back than that, that's where you lose me a little bit, because if you go in the 1800s and 1700s, that's just the way the world was. But recently, so like what's happening, like people want to say race war and gender war, which are very interesting to live in the moments of these, which the gender war I actually don't believe is really happening. What I think the gender war is I think we're just seeing what was always said out in the open. So like, like women like ganging up and being like, fuck man, we don't fucking need men. Like, I think that's always been happening. And then guys being like, oh, women are gold diggers, like, I think this has just been like how we are biologically. It's just now we can see it in the open. The race war, though, is very interesting because you have a lot of white people who feel like they are being attacked for things that they never did. So like if you want to blame like white people for what happened in the 60s and the 50s and stuff, the creator of the Boondocks said it best. I think that currency is running very low these days. So you have that already. And then you have the fact that a lot of these migrants come and they want to change the way the country is, which like in America, what's beautiful about the Constitution is it can be changed. It's a living document. It's beautiful. I think it's a masterpiece. That being said, there is naturally going to be an outrage when we bring in these migrants to help them, to save them, which, God bless, it's the American dream. It's whatever dream you want it to be. But then if you go against the traditions, that's asking for trouble. So that's happening on a global scale. I'm seeing a lot, like people are saying what cracks me up about these like younger, I guess people who don't know history is they say, let's do another crusades. Let's bring it to the streets. It's like, okay, you don't understand. Like World War I and World War II were not just like cool things. These were tens of hundred, I think over 100 million people died. So cool your jets when you say like the third crusade. I think that's getting a little too far. And as an American, separation of church and state, that's where we are. But there is a natural outrage going on globally. So that's kind of what I want to talk about, ISA migration. Now the third one, this is where I'll give some detailed information. Is artificial intelligence. So my project, I can't get into my project my passion project I'm working on, but my field, a lot of people work with AI, and I'll tell you a little background about myself. So I worked in after college, I joined sales because that's what any liberal arts major does when they don't know what to do. So I joined sales. It was very good to me, and I decided to sell a very legacy industry, very set in stone, not a lot of advancement, and that's where I really, got my bones. I got my first, as I call it, rank. I got to be a leader. It was very hard, very challenging. But the reason I quit is two reasons. One, I didn't agree with upper management at the time, the upper leadership. I didn't think they had people's best interest in minds, which I've been mostly proven right. But the second reason, and this was a huge reason, is I realized I was like, I need AI experience. I need to work with, well, enterprise too, but I need AI. And so I decided to go work for a company. It wasn't like I'm not working for like OpenAI or anything like that, but I worked with a technology that used AI somewhat. And for better or worse, I had to work from home, which my social skills already weren't the best. So, but it was good for me. So for the last 2 years, I've been working from home for like an AI job, which is like very little AI, but AI enough. And then I had to go private for the last 2 months, last month and a half, because I've been looking to kind of go to the next step in my career. And the next step, I wanted to double down on that AI. And the reason is I saw the macro trend coming, which is like, you got to realize, man, like, I'm just going to rant real quick because it's kind of freaky, but 6 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever you want to call it, AI came out and we all thought it was kind of novelty. I was very skeptical. Like, I deleted my first OpenAI account. I was like, oh, this is bogus. Like, screw this. But then I had a mentor at the time who was very smart, studied finance, as he says it. He told me, he's like, hey, just have a conversation with AI. Like, talk to it like a person. See what happens. Just kind of go down the rabbit hole a little bit. And then the stories started coming. I did that, and that was the first moment where I was like, whoa, this is powerful technology. And then the stories started coming out as far as people falling in love, AI boyfriends, et cetera, et cetera. Like Her, you saw the movie Her in real life, which I hated that movie, but I can't deny it. There's some truth to it right now. So, and then I would say the last year and a half, this year especially, 2025, I think a lot of people, like I saw the macro trend coming about 2 years ago, which is why I started, like, I wanted to get some experience in it. But this year is the first year where we are seeing people are scared. People are fucking terrified of artificial intelligence. And luckily I'm good right now. I just landed like I just got an offer and I landed a new career position where I'm going to be, I can't give it away due to like, company confidentiality, but I'm looking good. It's all I'll say. In my opinion, I realized I was like, if you can't beat them, join them. So that's all I'll say. But there's a lot of people who are scared, rightfully scared for their jobs. So the biggest news that happened this week is Amazon. Jeff Bezos came out and said they're looking to replace 600,000 jobs in the next, I think, 5 years, which, spoiler alert, that's a very conservative timeline. They're saying that timeline to avoid PR, avoid bad PR. It's really not give away their cards. Realistically, Amazon's probably going to do that in the next 2 years. You've seen data centers being built everywhere, which I'm not going to get into data centers that much, but like, let's say logistics and warehousing and material handling, that all can be automated. And even driving's going to be pushed down the line for compliance reasons, but driving's going to be automated too. So if you think about it, if you have automated drivers, automated truckers, automated unloaders, automated warehousing, automated material handling, automated the whole supply chain could be automated, which is wild. That's the infrastructure is going to take a while to build, but that could happen in 3 years, especially with Amazon's fucking $1 trillion. That could happen in 2 years. So that's the huge news coming out of Amazon. And then this is kind of my prediction as far as the actual numbers. And this is crazy, man. I can't believe I'm saying this. Let me get some water for this one. I think AI is going to replace over 50% of white collar jobs in the next probably year. In 2026, I'm hearing rumors that big tech is about to make a big swing. But yeah, I would say 50% of all white collar jobs, from accounting to even legal to sales to customer service to operations, I think it's all going to get cut. It's going to get gutted in the next year. So I think 50% of white collar is imminent. And then I think 50% of even blue collar jobs are going to be knocked out in 5 years. Because if you think about blue collar, like plumbers are safe, which is very odd that plumbers are actually safe because it's very situational. But a lot of blue collar work, if like let's say they create a robot, iRobot and stuff, they create a robot that can do human tasks. Why wouldn't a corporation use them? I don't even blame them. Think about it. There's no insurance, well, besides like insuring the robot, but like no medical, no dental, no life insurance, no liability, little risk, doesn't need downtime, can work 16 hours a day, 8 hours recharge. It's a no-brainer. So I think 50% of blue collar jobs are going to get wiped out in the next 5 years too. So that's what's going on right now. Unfortunately, again, I think I'm one of the lucky ones where I saw the curve coming. I got issues, don't get me wrong. Like, I spend like a motherfucker, but I'm really good at noticing trends, and I saw this coming decently well. And I think I timed the market right, but I think it's going to be it's going to be a scary, scary year for a lot of people. So, and this goes into what I think, and I'm seeing news right now of like, there's like United States generals that are like, oh, I use AI for key decision making. It's like, aren't there movies like this where the general says something and then they fuck it up? So like war games where the AI takes over. So, and then this goes into this is just me kind of like wandering off, but I think AI, like I think a lot of humans are kind of feeling like an existential threat. And this goes into super intelligence, which is a lot of topics on that right now. But if we can get an AI so smart that it just makes itself, it's going to circumvent human interaction completely. And I saw like a thing where, in my mind, I think historically this is messed up, but one of the greatest things of humanity is our ability to be savage. Like, don't get me wrong, we're the top of the food chain, not because we're the nicest people. We're the top of the food chain because we beat everyone else. And I'm not saying like I don't justify genocide or anything like that, but it's one of the things we do, very, very, like one of the best things we do. So if this AI did ever become smarter than us, my questions are, one, would we be able to beat it? I don't know. Two, like the way we think of like a bug, right? Besides mosquitoes, because they have the West Nile virus, but like when you see like a roach or something in your house, you don't kill it thinking of like, oh, like I'm gonna fight you. You kill it as it's like a pest. And so if there ever was a super intelligence, the scariest thing is it would be indifferent. It wouldn't hate us. It would just kind of be like, I don't need you anymore. I don't need you. I can handle you. Go away. So I think a lot of people are kind of having like an existential, and maybe it's because I've worked from home for 2 years, which I'm happy to say this next career step that I'm taking, I'm no longer going to be working from home. So if this is the end of my channel, which it won't be, but I'll probably be a little more less erratic and more like calm, because I'll have a lot more interactions. But yeah, for 2 years it's been working from home, which there's pros and cons, but I'm ready to not. I'm never going to work from home again. But yeah, I think AI it's getting crazy. So that's my video. Thanks for listening. If you got this far, feel free to like and subscribe. In 2026, I'll focus more on intelligence, like intelligence activity, even though it's very hard to do. But I'll have more time on my hands to do that. And then the project I'll explain after I sell it. I'm hoping to make. I'll tell you the amounts I'm hoping to make. I'm hoping to make off the immediate sellables, which there's like two or three. I'm hoping to make 100 to 250 grand, probably 100 to 200 grand. And daddy could use that money. So that's why I decided not. I was thinking about like breaking the news, but I want to sell it. So I'm hoping to make a few hundred grand off of that, which would be very nice. And then there is a potential partnership. That's the second part of it, which I don't know how much that's worth. That one's more experimental, but we'd love to make that maybe like a part-time career. Who knows? So I'll explain that after that's sold. And then also my 2026 political calls, I'll be doing that probably in November, probably mid-November or December. I have a huge trip coming up. I'm going all the way across the world for like 2.5 weeks. I can't get into the reasons why, but it came out of nowhere. So I'll be, yeah, I'll be like 24 hours away for 2.5 weeks. And then I'll also do the 2028 presidential calls. That one I'll do about around the new year because that one's gonna be very nuanced. A lot of people say, JD Vance or Kamala Harris, and I think there's a lot of interesting candidates that are coming out. Yeah. Oh, one more thing. I guess this goes into. I've just talked about this with a few people, like in real life. I talked to actually a bartender about it recently. Um, the passing of the torch is happening. So like a lot of like eras are ending, and I think it has to do with the Greatest Generation. I think the Greatest Generation, World War II, their influence and impact lasted 80 years, and I think now our generation, millennials, Gen Z is wild, but I think millennials are going to hold a lot of the hard power. Is going to create what new society is. There's going to be some like some things will stay the same forever, but I think like a lot of like legacy stuff is out the door soon. So that should be interesting. And then, yeah, I think that's it. So this is Relent USA. Thanks for listening. And again, this was kind of a warm up, re-engage from the month and a half of being private. I had to go ghost mode, lock in for a little bit, but good news is I succeeded. So hope everyone's doing good. If I don't talk to you, which I probably won't, happy Halloween. Oh, and then an American Rants, those podcasts are only going to be when I have something that I'm like, I have to tell. I just get heated about, which the obvious one was Charlie Kirk. So, yeah, hope everyone's good. Thanks, guys.